Welcome back. So today we're talking about the 5 lessons a millionaire taught me about life and wealth by Richard Paul Evans. Number one, New York Times bestselling author for many books. Richard Paul Evans has written dozens of books. I think the one that made him most famous is the Christmas Box, and then he's got dozens more. He's written a lot of books and he's made a lot of money. And so this book, a nonfiction, he's talking about wealth principles, and he kind of starts the book by explaining that when he was young, he had the chance to go meet this multimillionaire who owned the Jazz basketball team and all these things. So I'm assuming the person that he met was Larry H. Miller. Being a Utah guy myself. So I don't know for sure because he never says it, but I think it was Larry H. Miller who became, a billionaire, owns all kinds of franchises, and was extremely successful financially and in business. And so at a young age, Richard had the chance to talk to him about wealth, and he ended up going out doing well for himself and having a bit of a relationship with this person. And so he kind of talks about his own story and how wealth was sort of, or I guess finance was a part of his life from a young age. His dad got injured and could not work, and so they had to sell their house. They ended up living in an apartment. They were very poor as a result of all this stuff. And we'll kind of end with his dad's story in the end. But so as a teenager, they didn't have a lot of money, and he decided that he didn't want to live poor and things. So he started implementing these strategies of wealth at a pretty young age. So I'm going to skip through a lot of different things in this book. It's actually a very short book. It's about 90 pages or so, and it's a quick read. But he says, by the age of 16, I had become somewhat financially independent. I bought my own clothes, my own car, and paid for my own entertainment. By 18, I had saved the equivalent of $7,000, enough to finance my schooling and a church mission. By the age of 26, I had saved enough to put 25% down on a house on a beautiful tree-lined street. By the age of 31, I had paid off my home. Less than 20 years from the time my millionaire friend gave that talk, I returned to him with several $1,000,000 I wanted his help in investing. So that timeline breaks it down. I mean, he did a very good job of making and managing money from a young age, right? 16, purchasing all those things, paid off a house by 31. Pretty incredible, better than most. In 1946, household debt was 22% of personal disposable income. Today, it's roughly 110%. Isn't that crazy? So people are basically living on debt and just spending. And that's the culture of today, which if you go look at some of my other videos on like the stock market and the way the economy is stimulated, one of the easiest ways is through debt. And we've decreased the interest rate every time we have a recession. And now here we are with a 0% interest rate. And yet the economy is coming to a kind of a struggling halt. And so we'll see what happens. But in your individual life, if you live off debt, you will become a slave to your debt, right? Wealth is more than just luck. Only 2% of today's millionaires inherited all or any part of their homes or property. Fewer than 20% inherited even a small portion of their wealth, and those victims of lucky-induced wealth don't often retain their prizes. Of those who come into fortunes through lotteries, more than 80% are bankrupt within 5 years. The fate of those receiving other windfalls, such as insurance claims and inheritance, isn't much better. So this reminds me of a principle that Jim Rohn talks about, where he's like, if you make $1,000,000, you better become a millionaire real quick so that you can keep the money, right? Saying that being a millionaire is a behavior or a mindset or a way of living, not having a lot of money, right? And so like if you don't have that lifestyle, you'll lose the money very quickly, and the statistics show it. One thing I need to say is that this book was copyrighted in 2004. So some of these statistics and stuff have changed in the last 20 years, but just so you're aware of that. The wealthy understand the principles of accumulating wealth and live them. All right. So now we're going to jump into the 5 lessons. Okay. So this book has 5 lessons, and then there's some additional aspects to some of those lessons that we'll get into. But lesson number 1, decide to be wealthy. So he says that being wealthy is a mindset first, and that goes along with so many, influencers and self-help books that they basically say, like, what you believe yourself to be will always come through, right? So if you believe you're broke, if you believe you have bad spending habits, if you believe you'll never make it, if you believe that wealth is a luck thing or a privilege thing, or, depending on where you were born, then you'll never make it. If you believe that it is built by the individual and that your behavior is what determines how much wealth you'll have, you'll gain wealth. So in order to be truly happy, we must live balanced lives. To be in great physical health is very much like being in great physical health. It allows you to do more and be more, and it permits you to live your life free of constant pain and bondage. Right? There's principles to all these things, right? At every aspect of your life, whether you're talking about your physical health, your mental health, your wealth, right? It's all based on behavior, and you've got to put some intentional thought behind it and create patterns that will help you do that. Lesson number 2, take responsibility for your money. And what we started the podcast episode with was, money makes a good servant, but a bad master. It's a quote from a French proverb. Basically, you have to be the owner of every dollar, right? Dave Ramsey is huge on this. He's like, you've got to know every dollar you make and assign every dollar a task, or you will not know where your money goes and you'll retire poor, right? If you can retire at all. But if you take responsibility for that money and you say, okay, I made X dollars this month, this many are going to go to mortgage, this many go to, the cell phone, this many go to the internet, this many go to food, and you give every dollar an assignment, including those, and this is maybe the most important, those dollars that are going to be in your investment account so that they can go earn you money while you're sleeping, then you will eventually accumulate wealth. But you have to take absolute responsibility for it so that you do not become a slave to your money. I have several videos on this where it talks about that, like, your time is attached to money until you create some financial freedom, and then your time is separated from your money because you've got all these assets that are earning the money for you. So you need to know where your money comes from. You also need to know where your money is going, right? As my own financial empire grew, I became careless and relinquished more and more control to others. I soon found myself running short on cash. When I regained control of my finances, I discovered that my overhead had nearly doubled in my absence. So he's talking about a time when he started his business and it was having a lot of success. So he's sort of handing over the reins in different aspects. And before you know it, the money was getting away, right? And so he had to sort of rein it in. Know what your money is doing. The entire point of amassing wealth is to make it work for you. Eventually, as you stay true to yourself in the 5 lessons, your money will earn more each year than your salary. Money will become your servant instead of the other way around. If you had an employee who sat around and did nothing, would you quickly fire him? Ongoing monthly evaluations of your investments is vital to your financial success. And I can't reinforce that enough. Like, you need to be aware of your money. Where is it? What is it doing? Right? Not too long ago, my parents had created these little investment accounts for their grandkids, and they were asking me about, should they move it? Should they let their parents manage it? What should we do? And I said, well, go take a look at it and see which accounts they're invested in. How do those compare to, like, the S&P 500? If they're outperforming the S&P 500, go ahead and leave it. It's probably in a great spot. If it's underperforming the S&P 500, you need to start moving that around, because why are we in an investment account that's like earning less than such a simple uh, stock market average, right? And they went and took a look, and sure enough, some of them were doing really good, and others were not. So they just moved the money around. You need to be aware of what it's doing. No reason to invest when a kid is 4 years old so that they have a bunch of wealth when they're old if it's only growing at a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% interest rate, right? Let's get that up there. So know what your money is doing. These are like employees. Like each dollar is like an employee to you. Every dollar you keep and invest is a new employee. Back to the book. Saying that you don't have time to follow your money is like saying that you don't have time to watch the traffic signals as you drive. In fact, you don't have time not to. You spend thousands of hours each year earning. Why wouldn't you take a few hours a month to track where it's going? It's such a brilliant point. You don't have time not to take care of your money and manage it. Lesson 3, keep a portion of everything you earn. I've already kind of touched on this, but it's not how much you earn, right? In fact, he says it in here. You've heard it said before, and it is true. It's not what you earn, it's what you keep that makes you rich. The wealthy person pays herself first. Back in the 20s, George S. Clausen wrote, I found the road to wealth when I decided that a part of all I earned was mine to keep. And that's a big lesson in The Richest Man in Babylon as well. Like, you need to pay yourself a certain amount every time you get paid, whether that's your typical salary or one-off, earnings or gifts or whatever. You need to make sure that a chunk of that is yours to keep. You're going to invest it in something so that it will become your employee forever and earn you money going forward, right? Then he gets into the idea of compound interest, and he gives a few examples. So he's talking about a typical income at the time, 46,800 a year. If Mr. and Mrs. Average allocate 10% of their income to their nest egg and earn an average interest rate of 10.2% based on the average S&P over the last 50 years, they will accumulate wealth at the following rates. So 10% a year. First year, $5,000. 5 years, 31 grand. 10 years, 82, 15, 166. Year 20, 302,000. Year 30, 881,000. Year 40, 2,400,000. So between, year 20 and 30, they gain 500 grand. And then between year 30 and 40, they gain close to $2 million, like $1.5 million, right? So if they invested 15% of their income after 40 years, they'd have 3.6 million. If they invested 20% of their income at 40 years, they'd have $4.8 million. So compound interest is really what can make you extremely wealthy on a typical income, right? Now, you have to be very conscious of where you're spending your money in order to invest like that. He tells a story of his friends who were drowning in debt. They made great money, but they were spending it like crazy, right? So he gives them some advice and how to get started and what to do. So I'm going to jump into this story kind of at the end, but James and Heather are their names, chose to follow the precious metals route as well. So they were purchasing precious metals as like their starting point for an investment fund, right? And they actually would buy physical metal and put it in a jar. He says Heather pointed out to me two advantages she had discovered in accumulating metals. First, it gave her perspective. She began to weigh the cost of an item against the price of silver. I could take my kids out for dinner, or I could buy four more pieces of silver. So it was sort of like um, her checks and balances system. It was like became exciting for her to put the metals in the jar or accumulate the metal, right? And so she started thinking like, can I buy more metal, or should I buy these, fries? And one of them is fleeting, the other is accumulating wealth. The second thing, purchasing the silver rounds satisfied Heather's urge to spend. Like so many others, she had discovered that she was a shopaholic, so spending her money on silver was like eating her cake and having it too. And I've found that for myself. I'm not a shopaholic. In fact, I hate shopping, but the satisfaction of purchasing another stock is like exhilarating to me. I watch it grow. One of my favorite things to do is to track my net worth every month. So, first few days of every month, I sit down and I go through all my assets and all my debts and I write them down. And it's like exciting to me that I accumulated more wealth. So when you make those purchases, that's what you're doing. Lesson number 4, win in the margins. Fortune befriends the bold. John Drader. Uh, John Dryden. So he says the wealthy find additional ways to increase contributions to their growing nest egg. And in this chapter, he goes through multiple ways that you can win in the margins, right? He tells some of his own stories of how he he would clean up construction sites as a kid, and he noticed that everybody would run to the gas station and buy candy bars and drinks like multiple times a day. So what he did is bought a cheap cooler, filled it with drinks and a few treats, and he sold them for twice as much money at the construction site. And at some point he was like making as much money off of his little cooler concessions as he was from cleaning the sites. And so he's winning in the margins, right? Now, the biggest one for him is he wrote A Christmas Gift. And this was a little short story that he'd written that others wanted copies of. So then eventually he self-published it, made like $20,000. He put the money back into sort of marketing it, made another $400,000, and then he eventually made over $4 million off that one little book. And that was a side hustle, right? So he says the most money I've made in my life was on a side project. It wasn't my first such venture. It was my 14th. So he's trying things. Can he make a little money here and a little money there? And he found one that was extremely successful. So this is called double your wealth. While those in the previous examples all hit it big, even earning just a percentage of your regular income each month goes a long way toward building your wealth. As indicated by the compound interest graphs in lesson 3, if you're earning an average household income and are saving 10%, you are putting away about $468 a month. If you increase your income by an extra $468 a month and apply it to your nest egg, it is, in the long term, accumulation of wealth, the equivalent of doubling your income. I love this point because you don't have to double your income to double your contribution to your investments, right? So he's talking about these people that make average incomes and they contribute 10% of their income to like their 401k, for example. But you don't have to make twice as much money to double the amount you're putting in. You just need to make that much more, the same that you're putting in, right? So these people, if they make $468 a month more by delivering pizzas and they put it in their 401k, they're doubling their contribution, and over time they're doubling their wealth, right? Very cool concept. He says, I suggested earlier that there's another way to double your contribution to your nest egg that doesn't include extra earnings: saving. It's the second way to win in the margins. Just be conscious of where your money's going. Eliminate wasteful spending, things you don't need right now, and saving more doubles your contribution. Winning in the margins with saving, he says, in the same way that the millionaire mentality recognizes that the world is designed to take your money, it also knows that the average American has been brainwashed to consume and spend. Billions of dollars are spent in advertising each year to entice you to spend. Market research and retail and anthropologists specifically study your shopping behavior to more effectively target you. On the internet, computers track your spending habits and systematically parade offers in front of you. Politicians and bureaucrats increase fees and taxes. Determined salespeople take courses in learning how to get you to part with your money. Successful wealth builders recognize the nature of the real world and therefore carefully scrutinize each expenditure. They learn to win in the margins by keeping more of what they earn. I think it's interesting to be cued into just how much time, effort, and energy is put into getting you to part with your money. It has an influence on us. If you can kind of name it and recognize it, then you can start to take action against it, right? He says this millionaire mentality can be applied to all aspects of financial endeavors, from business to personal spending. There are four key mindsets that characterize the wealth builder. Number one, the millionaire mentality carefully considers each expenditure. Number two, the millionaire mentality believes that freedom and power are better than monetary pleasure. Number three, the millionaire mentality does not equate spending with happiness. Number four, the millionaire mentality protects the nest egg. Just a quick comment on that last one, protecting the nest egg. If you're invested, like right now, the stock market has taken a significant drop, right? And if you lose 50% of your wealth, you now have to gain 100% of your wealth to get that much back. So you don't want to lose, right? You got to protect your downside. Okay, mindset one. Carefully consider each expenditure. There are four questions that the successful wealth builder asks himself before he spends his money. Number one, is this expenditure really necessary? Is it possible to get the same personal effect without using the money or using less of it? He ends that section by saying less is more. This is corroborated by a study that showed that 86% of Americans felt happier after having voluntarily cut back on consumption. We just consume like crazy people these days. Number two, is this expenditure contributing to my wealth or taking from it? Number three, is this an impulse purchase or a planned purchase? Am I being pressured to make an expenditure I'm not certain about? He says most grocery stores estimate that more than 50% of purchases are impulse purchases, which is why they put things like milk, bread, and eggs in the back of the store so that you have to walk by the chocolate chip cookies, the chips, all the stuff, right? And then you're like, we'll just throw that in on our dinner tonight, or maybe I want that treat as I drive home. People are aware of this, so you need to be aware of it. You need to write a list down, what I'm going to purchase when I go to the store, go get those items, and leave, right? You got to be dedicated to it. Mindset two, the millionaire mentality believes that freedom and power are better than monetary pleasure. The wealthy see the danger of debt and know that the primary way to avoid it is by delaying gratification. A decade ago, Time magazine reported that brain research suggests that emotions, not IQ, may be the true measure of human intelligence, and the ability to delay gratification is one of the key indicators of emotional intelligence. Interestingly, it is also an indicator of future success. He goes over the marshmallow study, which I think most of us have heard at this point, but very cool about delayed gratification. My father's epiphany. His dad brought him and his siblings and stuff into this room of their now 2-bedroom apartment that they had lost their house. It was a little grim, right? And he says, he looked us over sadly, then said, I've spent the last 3 days figuring out why, after all these years of hard work, I have nothing to show for it but bills. Do you know where it all goes? To us, one of us asked. No, he said grimly. I wish. It goes to interest. All those heartbeats went to paying interest to make someone else wealthy. Delay gratification, never borrow money. Simply put, there are two kinds of people, those who earn interest and those who pay it. That's the fundamental difference between the wealthy and the desperate. And that's where that quote comes from, that money makes a good servant but a poor master, because money has no conscious, it's a material, it's a thing that we use to trade and barter. But if you sign up to owe someone a bunch of money so that you can have something now, you're now a slave to that debt. You're the servant to that debt. Money is your master. Mindset three, the millionaire mentality does not equate spending with happiness. So many studies on this, folks. Like, once you earn a solid salary that can pay for your basic needs, health care, a vacation or so, 1 or 2 vacations a year, enough to provide birthday presents and whatnot, but not lavish, just simple, right? Once you've hit that point, increased income doesn't increase your happiness. So Don't equate your ability to spend money with your joy, because joy is actually found in having purpose, having good relationships, health, gratitude, love, like so many other things, right? And money can facilitate a certain amount of activities or basic needs that you'll be depressed if you don't have them. But once you've met those basic needs, money is not happiness, right? Mindset 4: the millionaire mentality protects the nest egg. So I'm not going to go into further detail on that because I've already talked about it, but make sure you invest and take advantage of compound interest and protect your downside. Don't get crazy. Okay, now we're going to lesson number 5, last lesson in the book: give back. He says, life is a balance sheet, right? He says, we love those whom we serve. Success in life cannot be measured on a balance sheet. I believe the truest measure of achievement is the degree to which we've learned to love, and service through sharing our wealth and our time is love made visible. It's a nice way of putting it. So just to recap the 5 lessons: number 1, decide to be wealthy. Number 2, take responsibility for your money. Number 3, keep a portion of everything you earn. Number 4, win in the margins. Number 5, give back. And then in the back of the book, he has a net worth tracker sheet. He's got dozens of copies of those. And then he also has a cash flow sheet so that you can keep track of your budget. And then he has a bunch of suggestions on how to earn a little side money, right? Side hustles and things like that. So very short, simple read, solid concepts. Again, it's about how you think about your money. It's how you treat your money. In my last episode with Madeline Wise, we talked about what if you and your money were being interviewed on like the Oprah Winfrey show about your relationship, and what would money say to you, or what would you have to say about your relationship with money, right? And so being caring and responsible for your money, using it for both uh, asset like needed assets as well as desired, fun entertainment, but within reason, and not going into debt so that you become the slave to money. Now, the next book that we're talking about on this podcast is Atomic Habits. And finances is a very uh, easy thing to track. And when you're looking at your spending habits, your financial management habits, you can easily write it down and see what you can change, right? Look at everything you spend, look at how much money you're getting, and how are you going to change it. Now you can create habits, and we'll get into habit stacking and how to create good habits in the next episode. So I highly encourage you to listen to that one next. But for now, that's the 5 lessons a millionaire taught me about life and wealth by Richard Paul Evans. So I will put a link in the show notes if you want to purchase that from Amazon. That's there for you. But as always, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.